One tree and two identities. This expressive metaphor given by the King Hassan II is the inspiration for not only the upcoming speech, but also the reason for which we are all gathered today. Therefore, it is with great honor and delight that I introduce the Professor of Political Sociology at Al-Qadi Iyad, author and co-author of many books, to deliver a speech about the African and the importance of building a common future. Dear audience, please welcome Mr. Mohsin Ahmadi.
Hi, everybody. It's nice to have me here today. First of all, I would like to thank Yunus Al-Iraqi for inviting me. For this very special occasion, and responded strongly to your invitation. And it's my honor to be here today to talk to you about, which is, in my view, a very crucial topic, which is the one of African, European, and North American relations. If I can just switch to the other mic. So, I'm Mohsin Al-Ahmadi, my personal name, which is Mohsin, and Al-Ahmadi is my family name. So, please, I would like to share with you some ideas and some feelings that we may share together. This is something which is very important for all of us. You come from all corners of the world. Some of you are coming from South Africa, others are coming from Asia, others are coming from Morocco, Africa, and some of you are coming from United States and Canada. So just to show you the richness of the world, and Morocco has a very particular situation or position, like being an African country, but at the same time, a European country, and also an Arabic country. So, I just want to use today a strong metaphor, a very powerful metaphor, and as you know, metaphors are, for what they stand for, not reality, but symbolism. So just to define the Moroccan geographical situation and therefore identity, late King Hassan II used an expressive metaphor saying that Morocco is a tree which has its trunk in the Arab world, its roots in Africa, and its branches in Europe. So let's go back to this picture. I'm very amazed to see that the tree has, in fact, three components: the roots, the trunk, and the leaves. And at the center of the trunk, you may see something like a circle, which is the cycle of the life, and Morocco is the heart of it. Morocco is the heart of it, mainly because when I spoke with Mr. Al-Iraqi about the title of my talk, I said, one tree and two identities. And my daughter, Shahrazad, corrected me by saying, no, Dad, Morocco is at least two identities, at the most multiple identities. Morocco is a country that is sharing geography, culture, and population, and all these components are living all together in harmony. And let's speak about living all together and sharing a common future. So, there is no strong metaphor than the one I may use, which is Hassan II. He's the former king of Morocco, And he was a very, let's say, smart man, very intellectual man, who can foresee the future. Not only live in the present, not only scrutinize the past, but he had this feeling that nobody had at his time, which is to see further, and now that the future can be shared commonly if it is lived profoundly. So, and then I would like to build up on this metaphor and to seek to demonstrate that the Arab world, among which Morocco, Europe, and Africa, should focus more on what is common to these continents and build up a common future in which individuals, peoples, will be recognized as equal human beings who have different identities but a common future. So this idea of multiple identities or different identities that not mean necessarily colliding or clashing or opposing. It could be a richness, which if it is taught well, if it is well represented, could serve humanity. And by saying humanity, I would focus on the young people. And as young people, you will inherit the world we are living now, the world that we shaped and reshaped. Now and nowadays, you will get this word in inheritance, and you have to print it in your own prints, and you have to reorient it according to your own adventure, not only in your studies, but in your life. So studies is a bridge to life. Studies is a kind of means to know how to think well in the complexity of today's world. So, let's speak about these multiple identities. And I have here to thank my daughter Shahrazad for, drawing my attention to the fact that I mentioned only 2 identities. And I said, oh, you're right. I will catch up. But instead of saying 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 identities, I will say multiple identities. So nobody can just squeeze me by saying, well, this is what we agreed upon altogether. So Moroccan unity is historically forged by convergence of its Arab Islamic on the one hand, Amazigh on the second hand, and for sure the Saharan Hassani components, nourished and enriched by its African, Andalusian, and Hebraic, and I stress on Hebraic and Mediterranean influences and confluence as well. So why I'm stressing on this Hebraic identity, it's because if we define the Arabs as an ethnicity and the Muslims as a religiosity, then we have another component of the identity, which is the Saharan Hassani identity. It's like an extension of our self, of our collective self as Moroccans. And of course, it goes without saying that I have to mention the origin of the Saharan, origin, which is the Hassani, as a culture, as a specific culture among this cycle of social life. But also, and this is something that should be stressed on much more than any other one, which is the African dimension of the Moroccan identity. We are not only North Africans, we are not only Arabs, we are as well Africans. Our roots, if we go back to the tree, our roots are deeply digged into the African soil. Our trunk is in the Maghreb, it's in North Africa, but definitely we are part of African culture, and by doing so, we are enriching our identity so that we may understand what's going on in Europe as the modern world, and in the United States and Canada, but I apologize for if there are any Canadian people here to say that Canada is the head of the United States. Maybe it is not the case. It could be the brain of the United States. Why not? But all in all, let's say that Morocco is definitely an African country. And something that should be pointed out truthfully is that Morocco has a Jewish origin and a Jewish root. And we are very proud of this because Morocco used to unify all these components of the society and all these colors of the Moroccan identity by saying that Judaism, marked and printed its mark on the Moroccan religious culture, but also the Hebraic components of the Moroccan society is still vivid nowadays, and we are sharing many common features and common data because we believe that without this diversity, Moroccan society will be monolithic, and all monolithic societies are condemned to disappear. So this recognition of the self, this recognition of others and otherness is a very crucial behavior in the Moroccan social behavior. So, but all these identities I mentioned are gathered in the Mediterranean basin, which is a place where cultures used to exchange and where people used to move. So, please, let's shift to the preamble of Moroccan constitution or Morocco's constitution by saying that the preeminence accorded to the Muslim religion in the national reference is consistent with the attachment of Moroccan people to the values of openness, moderation, tolerance, and of dialogue for mutual understanding. There are some vital values that we feel that we defend, and we defend strongly because we need to open up a kind of not only religious dialogue, but cultural dialogue, human dialogue between all the cultures and civilization of the world. This is the main characteristic of the Moroccan culture and Moroccan society. And since then, we are very known of being open, of being moderate and tolerant towards other cultures and towards other values. So why Morocco is the best Arab country that is doing good, doing well in the Arab world, in North Africa, in the Maghreb region. It is not out of nothing. It's only because Morocco accomplished a deep work on its identity, a deep work on the collective self and our collective and individual representations. So Morocco is a moderate country, and this is, it has been witnessed by many, political heads and chiefs, that Morocco is an open society. And as an open society, you cannot have enemies. You can have only friends. So more you open up the game, the more you will be willing to share the future and to live under the same values. So these are some of the Moroccan values I would like to talk to you today. And that's why Morocco and Africa are linked, as you may see in the behind the two chiefs of state, King Mohammed VI and the Malian, the Senegalese presidents. And there's another aspect which is very important for Morocco. Morocco has been, is reputed for being only a French influence zone or a European influence zone. I would like to draw your attention that was true, but it's no longer true. Why it is no longer true? Because Morocco now, knowing that the global world, the world as it has been reshaped after the collapse of the Soviet Union and the Berlin Wall, this wall will not this world would not resemble to the one that our fathers inherited during the Cold War. So Morocco opened up to the Atlantic connection, if I may speak so, and mainly is seeking to strengthen its relations with the United States. And this picture is showing when King Mohammed VI visited Barack Obama in the White House. And you know Morocco was the first country to recognize the independence of the United States. Morocco, as well, is a very strong ally to the United States. And the United States and Morocco signed an FTA, which is a free trade agreement, in 2004, and this agreement entered into force on January 1st, 2006, as I mentioned. And the United States and Morocco FTA is a comprehensive agreement that supports the significant economic and political reforms. It's not only about economy and finance, it's also about society, it's about political reforms, and that are underway in under Mohammed VI's realm. And the FTA provides for both Morocco and the United States to improve commercial opportunities by reducing and eliminating trade barriers. I know this is very important for the American economy, because the American economy is a worldwide economy, is determining what is going in the level of the economy and the finance, but Morocco is seeking to foster its economy in order to open up the political game and to reform deeply the society, deeply the state, so that they may match with the basic, let's say, conditions for modernity and for democracy. Of course, this needs to be effective, and in order to be effective, Morocco and the United States have opened a kind of strategic dialogue since 2013. And just to give strength to this visit, the outcomes of 2014 second strategic dialogue and the shared economic objectives discussed during the Vice President Biden's visit to Morocco, and the strategic partnership and shared vision, which is something very important. We have to learn how to share and not to impose. In the colonial period, all international forces had this reflex of imposing their own and unilateral vision of the values, the word, the relations, the order, and so on and so forth. But in this time, we are living in a world, in a new world, in which hegemony and domination should not be the only way to speak to people. If you want to implicate them and to integrate them and to include them in a fair and just world order, you have to listen to them. You have to listen to their wishes, to their grievances, to their claims, to their demands. And this is, I think, a new way of sharing values and sharing experiences. So, this vision promotes a secure, stable, democratic, and prosperous Maghreb, Sahel region, Africa, and the Middle East. And as you know, Morocco is very present and engaged in Africa. Morocco is not, introducing itself in the African country as the colonial powers used to do, but Morocco is promoting another policy, a new policy, which is based on a win-win, let's say, strategy. And that's why Morocco is open to not only to Europe, but also to Africa, because Morocco is orienting its policy or international relations towards Africa as well. I cannot finish my presentation and not to talk to you about the risks and the dangers of the actual world we are living in. So, as you know, many hatred movements, many hatred organizations, let's say violence organizations, regardless of the color of their religions and faith, regardless of their cultural background or their ideologies, what is common to all these movements is that they hate open societies. They hate what is new. They want to stick to the past. They want to just make a kind of tabula rasa on what humanity accomplished in terms of progress of spirituality, the progress of, the rationality, the progress of science, and so on and so forth. So, Morocco is very well engaged in this international strategy to face any kind of radicalism, extremism. And Morocco is the forefront of this combat. So the meeting between His Majesty Mohammed VI and the King, the President Holland shows that shows that the shared values will consist on how to fight all forms of terrorism. And he said that that fruitful security cooperation between Morocco and France is essential and necessary to eradicate terrorism. We know that the United States, Australia, Indonesia, Morocco, Spain, England, recently France have been hit by such radical movements. This is, since you spoke this morning about the adventure, this is the dark side of the modern world. Modernity promised progress. Modernity, consists on the fact that human beings are all good, and what will come from people necessarily will be good, but we discovered since the Second World War, and now with the terrorist organizations, that man is not all good. There is a dark side in human life. And that's why we need to take this into consideration when looking to the world and maybe getting into or onto the train of adventure. So the adventure is not only rosy, but also it can have a kind of dark side, and we need to pay attention because we need to build up a common future, and this common future should be shared by common people, not only specific elites or specific social classes. And we cannot do that if we don't go for a mutual beneficial world for all its components, all its populations, or all its countries. The North cannot say the North if the South is what it is. So the strategic dialogue between the North and the South, between the East and the West, between the Orient and the Occident, should be based on mutual benefits, mutual interests. And you have to keep in mind that in order to share a common future, a common world, we have to integrate in our minds that we need to give other people or to give them the opportunity to share the interests, other interests, be economic, be social, be cultural, be human rights interests and principles and values. Without this, I think that we cannot go further in constructing this common future and this common world. So here, just to give you an idea about what Morocco accomplished with the European Union, it's known that the relationship between the two entities is based on a mutual commitment to promote common values, and it's implemented through a mutually agreed action plan, and which defines a series of social, economic, and political reforms with short and medium-term priorities. That could be generalized, not only to the UN, but to between Morocco and United States, Morocco and Australia, Morocco and India, Morocco and South Africa, Morocco and, I apologize if I forget other countries. But all in all, we need to have this idea that what we can define today might determine the world we would like to create tomorrow. And if we miss it, believe me, we will endure from it. And I would like just to speak about the future. And the future here is when people are still children. And when people are still children, we know how to form their minds, their hearts, their psyche. And once again, we have to have a kind of self-reflection. We know to question ourselves. What I am doing today, what I am doing tomorrow, what I'll be doing the day after tomorrow, in order not to live in a selfish way, but in order to say, I have to pay back. I have to take into account that other people may depend on what I do today and tomorrow. So, to fulfill this strategic objective, all parties and stakeholders should collaborate all together on a win-win basis and negate all forms of exclusions. I watched the spots that have been put on the screen on India, and I said, oh, I must feel lucky. I live in Morocco, and above all in Marrakesh, which is a very nice city, and I have everything at my hand. My children feel very comfortable with me at home. But those people who have nothing, just slums, shanty towns, what can I do for them? So I hope that this is the same interrogation that you got from this morning presentations, what you can do for people you want to live with and share with a common future. Thank you so much.
So, Mr. Ahmadi, thank you very much for your amazing presentations. And now we will move to the Q&A. So, does anyone here has a question?
Hello, my name is Christopher Ince. I'm the International Director at Gordonston School in Scotland. Can you, in the context of, I'm over here.
Oh.
Hello.
Hi.
Hi.
Please, go for it.
Can you, in the context of this common future, could you share with the students, or indeed speculate, what, can you share students here what Morocco's relationship as a Muslim country may well be with America should Donald Trump become president?
I guess it's a trap. Your question is a kind of trap. Yeah, I cannot even imagine a guy in office, in the White House, because if it happens, maybe it should be like the most tragic error that the American people would commit in its political life, because this man is, let's say, insane. I don't think that he's made for responsibility. I even ask myself how could be a good father. You cannot be a good president if you are not a good director or a good father. So he is promoting a kind of hatred discourse. His behavior, his way of thinking, his communicative strategy is dividing people, not unifying people. And if you start by dividing people, then you may go to much more harder stuff, which is like opposing people one another, and then open up the door for like a civil war. I don't hope that will happen in the United States, because the American people is much more wiser than we think. But, well, I'm sure that Muslims will feel like excluded from this world that we would like to build all together. You cannot build this world with saying Muslims should not enter the United States territory until we get sure that they are not all terrorists. That means that when you are a Muslim, it means that you are a terrorist. And this is not my way of thinking, that can bring all people to live all together and to share a common future.
So, as a continuity to the question of the professor, I would like to know, we all know that what Donald Trump wants to do is build a huge wall. He wants to build a huge wall against Mexicans, against Muslims, against immigrants in general. But what I want to know is, will this, however, affect Morocco, either economically, politically, with other countries? Because we know when you're bad with the US, you're bad with the whole world. So would it affect Morocco or no?
Yeah, French minister used to say that facts are much more stubborn than ideas. Realities will bring back the man you mentioned to realities. Geography, geopolitics, international relations, international economy, and interests are much stronger than the discourses and the speeches we heard these last at least 6 months. Morocco, I think, will not lose from the coming into office of such man, because you know that American foreign policy and even domestic policy is not a man-made. It's institutions. Institutions are very stronger than, as we may see, even the wise guy like Obama. He has to turn his idea 7 times in his head before trying to implement it. So the American democratic institutions will be the shield against any extremist discourse or any extremist political orientation. Maybe Donald Trump will never be a president of the United States, but what he wants to do is just that people will talk about him. And we are participating to his strategy. And I'm obliged to do so, even though I said, just ignore him. And this is the best gift that the Republican Party will do to the Democratic Party by presenting such man to as a candidate, because he will not get into office, and Hillary Clinton has halfway paved towards the White House. So thank you the elephant party. Any other question?
Thank you, Professor. I'm from South Africa, at the other end of the continent, and I'm interested in the role or the place of the desert in Moroccan culture. I'm very conscious that Morocco faces out to the Mediterranean, to the Atlantic, and on the other side, if you like, has the desert. And so how does the desert shape the culture of Morocco and the past? And to what extent is the Saharan desert a barrier to the rest of Africa or a conduit?
Okay, if I understand well your question, you are, stressing the importance of the desert in reshaping the Moroccan identity as in other countries of the region. Of course, I would say that all dynasties that ruled Morocco came from the deserts. Almoravids, Almohads, and even the actual ruling monarchy, they came from the deserts. So the Moroccan states, the Moroccan society, the Moroccan culture is deeply shaped by the desert. Morocco cannot live without its roots, or in the desert and in Africa, and as you know, the desert is not that desertic. You have people living there, you have cultures, you have people crossing this desert and exchanging modes of thinking, ways of life, and so on and so forth. So Morocco, definitely, historically speaking, have been shaped by the desert, and the importance of the desert in the representation, in the imagination of the Moroccan people. You have to listen to Moroccan songs, to Moroccan proverbs, to the way people dress themselves. It's if you cut Morocco from its southern, Sahara provinces, Morocco will die, exactly like the tree I used. If you root it up, then the tree will die. So definitely, what makes Morocco much more as an enduring society is that the deserts helped us learn how to live without. In an ascetic mode of life, we know that some days we have plenty of things and other days we don't have, and Morocco can get over it. But it cannot get over the fact that its root is coming from the desert and from the Sahara and from Africa.
I am Omar from West Africa, specifically Ghana. If you look at the development of Morocco, you could clearly see that it is developing at a very fast pace. Now, the question is, what is Morocco doing to contribute to the development of the countries in West Africa that are so undeveloped or underdeveloped, full of poverty, high levels of inequality, and all the problems that you can think of in the world? How is Morocco contributing to the development of these countries, like Ghana? Thank you.
Thank you so much for this question. It's exactly my state of mind. I say, yeah, this is the official orientation of the Moroccan state, saying that Morocco should go to the Sahel, to Africa, in order to help, not in order to take advantage of some situations. Morocco is promoting a kind of win-win strategy. Morocco is not only taking from Africa its gold, uranium, and other natural resources. Morocco is bringing his savoir-faire, his expertise, his know-how to these countries. And you mentioned the sub-Saharan countries, Morocco went there with a kind of vision to these countries in terms of finance, in terms of economy, in terms of infrastructures. And Morocco is bringing not only these ideas and these means, but also some financial means to help these countries to develop. And we will never forget that we were in need, and many countries helped us, mainly Ghana, Senegal, Mali. When we were in difficult moments, the tribes that came from southern Morocco, the Sahara, came to Morocco and helped Morocco to rebuild up. So this common memory have not been forgotten. It's present, and the difference between the old colonial powers that invested Africa and mainly the sub-Saharan countries, it's only for selfish interests. Morocco is trying to, and since Morocco have never been a colonial power in these countries, Morocco is promoting another policy, which is, if we want to build up all together, we need to find our benefits and interests all together. If not, I think only one party will take advantage of this commerce, of this relation, and for sure it cannot continue. Morocco is helping sub-Saharan countries in terms of security, in terms of forming imams and murshidats as religious preachers. Morocco is forming some young people here in Morocco in the business, in commerce, and many schools, schools, not high schools in the sense of American educational system, but here, les grandes écoles, that means that we are forming the new generation that will lead in some countries of Africa, but the focus now is, as you mentioned, on sub-Saharan countries, and I'm sure and confident that later on this policy will be generalized to Africa as a unity. Any other question?
You mentioned Morocco's role as a country that has its roots in Muslim culture. How can this help this a moderate country against, I guess, where Donald Trump is coming from, IS, the extremes of Muslim culture? How can a stable, moderate country like Morocco help to change this perception in the world as a whole?
So if you just have a look on the North African country map and the Arab world map as well, you will see all countries, with no exception, are experiencing some hardship, except Morocco. Why? Maybe if we may have a kind of sociological analysis of the situation much more than economic, I would say that Morocco had a chance that had been governed by a very, let's say, futuristic king, which is Hassan II at his time. He was not all good, but he was not all bad. What he did in terms of the Moroccan, populace, he just reformed the political system, started reforming the political system. So all political forces were included in the system that his son, who is the ruling king, actually is improving, is furthering, is deepening. One of this futuristic policy is religion, is Islam. Moroccan Islam is exceptional. Morocco is one of the rare countries, if not the only country, that did not oppose to Sufism. Sufism has not been combated, as it happened in Saudi Arabia, as it happened in Iraq, in Syria, in many other countries, even in Libya, in Algeria, in Tunisia. So Morocco kept this, let's say, this spirit of Islam, which is popular Islam as Sufism. The songs you were hearing, Nasl Ghiwan, is exactly what has been inspired by Sufi, let's say, spirituality. So this Sufi spirituality with other component, which is Sharifism, which I define as the idea of adhering to the ruling monarchy on the basis of its descendants, or prophetic descendants. He is the descendants of the prophets. And people are looking at him as a sacred person, as a person who may continue and secure the continuity, durability, and stability of the society and the state. So the symbol of the commandments of the faithful is a shield against what you say in terms of extremism, of radicalism, because this Sharifism and Sufism both have been integrated into a modern understanding of Islam. And the modern understanding of Islam oriented this public policy towards like having a kind of open society, open culture. Morocco have not excluded any form of religiosity, even the ones that have been or are now related in a way or another to violence, such as Wahhabism. Wahhabi people used to have a foot in the States and complete religious freedom to talk to the Moroccan people and spread out their values. But Morocco is a well-protected society because of this cultural immunity that is given by the richness of different forms of religious life. Any other question? Yeah, I see one behind.
What is your view of the ISIS threats to Morocco as a stable Muslim country?
Wow. To the point. Yes. Well, it is not a social threat. It is not a religious threat. It's a security threat. Because ISIS, as we know, have been implicated in many coups and in many, let's say, attempts to the Moroccan security. But I think that the officials are doing a good job. They know how to counter this strategy. And as you know, Morocco is one of the best expert countries in the combat against terrorism. France, United States, Canada, Belgium, Dutchland, Spain, and very recently England are demanding Moroccan expertise. I'm not, let's say, a security expert, but what I can do is, say, is just the best thing to do, not to declare war by military means or even security means, but you have to develop the culture, to give people this immunity and ammunition against radical ideas. What is more dangerous, not the organizations that declare themselves as jihadi movements and organizations wanting to harm Morocco among other countries, but what the diffusing culture of radicalism in the minds of the young people. Once you are caught in this network of radical ideas, then you cannot say who may do what he can do in a given moment as an individual, which is more dangerous is individual terrorism than group terrorism. So I think Morocco is doing a good job. I don't know how, because I'm not in the confidence of the government, but I can say is by the consequences of the public policy regarding security, I may say that Morocco is doing well. Please.
So in terms of how a difference to achieve a common future, what do you think is the biggest boundary between Morocco and the rest of Africa or the rest of Europe that needs to be broken to achieve this?
Can you rephrase your question?
So to achieve a change for a common future, what do you think is the biggest boundary today that needs to be broken between Morocco and the rest of Africa or the rest of Europe?
Okay, if I understand well your question, you are asking what is this biggest country in Africa that can lead the transformation of Africa and also the relation between Africa and Europe. That is the question?
No, what's the biggest boundary that can be broken?
Okay.
Or that needs to be broken?
To start with is, to say that we need to deconstruct all representations that we have one towards the other. The first boundary that is preventing African people, African states to work all together is that we are very suspicious from one another. I think the most important boundaries that we need to overcome is regional conflicts, ethnic conflicts, sometimes some fake conflicts, like regional conflicts on borders, on some so-called movements of liberation, because the most important enemy that we need to face altogether is poverty, is lagging behind other modern countries, is illiteracy, and many other issues. So if we just spend our energies on conflicting one another, on opposing one another, like what is going on for Morocco, Southern Sahara provinces, like what's going on in Libya, between Libya and Chad, what's going on in Sudan, what's going on between Mauritania and Senegal. And I can give you multiple examples of these regional conflicts between African countries. Then you may understand why these ingredients of conflicts are still present at the dawn of the colonial era, during the colonial era, in a post-colonial era. So we need to take this future into our hands and to prioritize our objectives. What is important? National unity or the war against poverty? What is important for our population? Is economic development or arms sales and arms purchase? So we need to know what we want, and we need to find some ways and means to implement what we want instead of looking for elements of conflicts and replace them by elements of cooperation. We need to be positive. And my discourse to you is positive. And I would like to finish on this positivistic dimension of all discourses, which are, we need to know what we want. We want to fight one another all during our history, or we would like to build up Europe, since Europe understood that, since United States, learned well from the American Civil War, their destiny, their society, and their future changed And it changed dramatically because they know that in order to strengthen elements of conflict, they do the complete opposite of this, which is let's focus our energy on building up all together, on going the direction of the same objective, which is the common good. So if you have good in your heart, God will bless you by the same good that you have in your heart. And you have hatred in your heart, He will give you back or pay you back, but the same thing that you have in your heart. So make your game.
Good evening, sir. Morning.
Good evening. Yeah. Well, good afternoon.
I'm sorry, sir. Had we been influenced by the Arabic Spring, do you think we would have had the same? It would have had the same effects upon us as it had on the Syrian people or the Egyptian people? And if yes, why? Thank you.
Okay, so thank you for this question because it brings me back to something that is very recent, which is where I just co-edited the book on the post-Arab Spring era. That's true, that we need to have a right and, let's say, exact understanding of the Arab Spring. For some people, it's a conspiracy. For other people, is a reality. But in all cases, what is important is not the fact itself, the Arab Spring, or the so-called Arab Spring, because what happened in terms of uprisings is not only Arab. You have some Amazigh components, which is Berber components. You have some, what is it? In Syria and Iraq, the minority that is fighting against the central Kurds as well. So Arab, let's use the term Arab Spring as a generic title, not as an effective one. But all in all, what is important is not what happened. What is important is the consequences of what happened. The consequences of what happened that the Arab Spring promised liberty, freedom, democracy, and so on and so forth. And you know the song. But in fact, what happened? Generalized civil wars. Tunisia, Libya, Egypt, Syria, Iraq, Yemen. And the turn is coming for other countries, unfortunately. So, the Arab Spring was a destabilizing moment. Maybe in this destabilization, people will understand that once you touch the foundations of the society, of the living together, of the shared values, then your interpretation of what is Islam and my interpretation of what is Islam or should be Islam will be conflicting. So this conflict of interpretations of the religion is something that should be reconsidered, questioned, if not criticized. Islam is a religion, is a spirituality. It's said to be a state, which is not true. Islam, it's not, it's a state in the sense of an organization, a political community, but it's not a mode of governance. There is nothing in the Quran, there is nothing in the Sunnah saying that Muslims should be governed by a republican state or a monarchical state or a semi-monarchical or semi-republican state. It's open to the people to choose what mode of governance they want to be or to live under. So here we are in this moment on the interpretive stage, not on the political one. So each one of us may understand Islam that inherited the Arab Spring. Let's make the following observation. Wherever the Arab Spring happened and succeeded, and wherever it succeeded, when organizing fair, transparent elections, Islamist movements came into office. How come? Why? Why people are much more, let's say, sensitive to the religious chord of the violin? Because of the identities, not of what I may have as an idea or interpretation of Islam and its values in terms of Sharia, of law, and so on, but on what people are living under. Society, reality may explain to us why people may go toward a, let's say, radical interpretation of the text, and not an open and modern and rational and humanistic interpretation of the text. So the Arab Spring exacerbated this or these trends. And the consequence is that our people who are praising the same Lord, reading the same Quran, the same surahs, are fighting. Can we get a sense of this? A rationality of this conflict? It's a conflict over power and not over Allahu Akbar. So if we understand this, everything may be solved, and the Arab Spring can solve nothing if the Arab Spring would not be used only as a political or social or ideological trigger. It should be an occasion for us to question the different interpretations of Islam, and Islam related to politics, to state, and then to hegemony.
Hi, Chris Erasmus, Penryn College from South Africa as well. You mentioned all the different aspects to Moroccan society with focus in terms of Europe, Arab being the trunk and the roots in Africa. South Africa is also a country where there's different components, and to be honest, at times we risk being fractured. So in terms of Moroccan society, what is the core component that you would say that actually holds all those different aspects together into just a single Moroccan identity?
Yeah, thank you for this question. Yeah, so diversity is not against unity. We can be different, diverse, but we may have a kind of unifying factor that may give harmony to all the components. In Morocco, and this is our chance, we have some religious values, some religious vision of the world, some political ones, some social ones as well, which is, first, Islam is consensual. People may have different interpretation of Islam, but the fact is we are ruled by a king who is the descendant of the Prophet Muhammad, and there's, as I mentioned, the Sharifian ideology, political ideology, saying the body of the king in itself is a unifying factor. It's like embracing all differences, giving them room to live according to their way or their perceptions of life, but at the same time have a kind of consensual interpretation of Islam, because Islam and the way it's implemented with its, let's say, Sunni Islam, Maliki, jurisprudential school of Islam, that is recognizing the differences, sociological differences, anthropological differences, and other differences among the same body. So this body is multiple, it has different members, but it's working in a way that all members are knowing what to do, and trying to accomplish the same mission. And this mission is always, because I showed many times different photos of kings ruling Morocco. The body, and Kantarovich in his book is mentioning, the triple body of Jesus. So here we may have the same metaphor, which is the triple body of the commander of the faithful, as being king, this is the religious mission, as being political mission, sorry, being a religious component, as being a what? I'm getting a little bit tired, so maybe we may talk about these differences between different components. But well, I think that we may continue our discussion. We can continue our, let's say, continue our debate. These three components of the Moroccan body, which is the religious one, the political one, and the social one, is the guarantee for, the Moroccan society living according to different components, but giving a sense in the commandment of the faithful, which is the highly, let's say, highly religious mission for the king's body, who is trying to give a sense to all these components. So you'll be here for more time. I will be available. I will be at your disposal at any time you want. We may schmooze a little over a dinner. We may exchange around the table, and the table is round since you are in the round square. And I always ask myself, how a circle can be round, square? And I have the answer today. Okay, thank you so much for listening to me. And hopefully that we may stay in touch for other questions and other issues. Thank you so much.
So thank you, Mr. Ahmadi, for your presentation. Yeah.
I'm going to call Mr. Yunus to give this talk of appreciation to Mr. Ahmadi.
Oh.
We thank again Mr. Ahmadi, and now we will move to the housekeeping announcement. You will leave now to have your lunch, and I would like to remind you that you have a baraza at 2 o'clock, I think. Yeah, you can look at your badge, and there is your baraza number. So the second thing I want to tell you. You have in the evening, you will go to Jam Al-Fna. It's a very crowded place, so please remind in groups and with your leaders. Thank you. Yeah, and the baraza rooms are on the first floor, upstairs, yeah. Yeah, okay. Thank you.
And you should be there at time, please. Thanks.